We are a travel family and we just spent our first week in Scandinavia in the city of Stockholm, Sweden. I'm going to tell you all about Stockholm, all of our tips, our thoughts on it. It was kind of a harder city for us to navigate as a travel family than some, and I'm going to tell you why, and all of our favorite parts too. Starting out with transportation, I stayed 15 to 20 minutes outside of Stockholm city center. It took me really 45 minutes to an hour to get anywhere. The transportation system is absolutely daunting. That is especially if you have a stroller. The trains and the buses are expensive. We spent in a week over $100 on train and bus tickets. Other Scandinavian countries like Finland do reduced or even free tickets for trains and buses. Stockholm is not one of those cities. That being said, every train and every bus comes just about every 15 to 5 minutes even, so you don't have to wait that long to get your bus and train, which is a huge bonus. The problem is there's a bunch of elevators, and if you're on a stroller, you have to actually look at maps to ride the elevators to get to the right spots, so it's really easy to miss your train over and over again. The first couple days, it took us just to figure out the elevator system. Of course, we don't usually take really complicated trains. We live in the Olympia, Seattle area. Typically, it's not as complicated. If you're from New York, maybe you'll have a better time with this, but for us, this was really difficult. I recommend ditching a stroller if you can, and I also recommend staying as close to in the city as possible because we had to take a bus and then a train and then usually another tram. So it was 3 forms of public transit to get somewhere, and that was kind of complicated. It did take us 4 to 5 days just to kind of figure it out and get in the flow of that. If you can stay in city center, that would be helpful. Ditch the stroller, that would save you a ton of time and drama too. For activities to do with your kids, I was a little underwhelmed at the amount of activities, but there was a couple really special ones that I think we will cherish for the rest of our lives. Skansen is the biggest. It is an open air museum that's 70 acres, and it has a bunch of real old traditional buildings. So old cabin houses and pottery places where people would make pottery, and it's interactive. So they'll have things where we ground our own mustard and we cleaned our own beets. We saw lots of farm animals. They even have an on-site zoo of all the local animals in Sweden, including bears and moose. It was pretty cool, actually. Notice that in Stockholm, if you're doing something with your family, it's probably gonna cost $100. So this was $100 to do. But if you're in Stockholm, this is the one big thing I really recommend doing. It was wonderful. Also wonderfully educational. So your kids are going to learn everything they need to learn about Sweden in one special place. My favorite part of being in Sweden was going to Junibacken, which is this kids hands-on museum. I love kids museums, but this one, now the playrooms were nothing to write home about. They were cool. They were very creative, small and simple. There was only a couple, but there was this thing called the Story Train. It's a ride. And I was expecting it to just be a little loop. This was the most beautiful ride I've ever been on. It was like a Disneyland ride, but they built scenes of every Swedish story. It's 15 minutes. The train goes high into the air, low underground. It's not fast. My 3-year-old and my 6-year-old and I went on it, and we were literally jaws dropped. We could not believe how beautiful it was. It would tell you Swedish stories. They have it in every language, so in your train, it'll just be your language. It was the most, it felt like the longest ride I've ever been on. 15 minutes really felt special. And it was also the most beautiful ride I've ever been on. So again, this place, it costs, I think, $60 for just me and my 2 kids to go, which is expensive, especially because it was pretty much just a 15-minute ride and a couple playrooms. But if you think about the price of going to Disneyland, it cost about that much a ride, and this was as good as any Disney ride, except it was such a beautiful cultural experience where you really got to understand the stories and culture of Sweden. Their kids' stories are really different than our kids' stories. Lots of dragons and death and heavy themes, but also truly beautiful. Beautiful aesthetics too, very Waldorfy. There's also theme park rides at this place called Gruneland. Now, this is a downtown theme park. The things I don't like about Gruneland is that it's the Ferris wheel you'll see downtown and things when you're downtown and there's rides, except you have to pay to enter and then you have to pay for rides. So I feel again, it's so crazy expensive. You're paying $100 or $200 to take your kids on 10 rides. I don't love that part. We were gonna go because it's just one of the classic Swedish to-dos, but to my surprise, they're closed multiple days a week. So I missed it the first half of the week, and then the second half of the week it was closed, which is weird, right? It's weird, but especially for teenagers. If I had a teenager, I would make this a priority because I have little kids. There's only 10 rides that they can even kind of ride, so Wasn't a huge miss on my part, but if you've got older kids, I would maybe try to prioritize that. The green spaces in Stockholm are not great. There's not a ton of green spaces. But when you find a park or when you find a green space, it is beautiful and immaculate and wonderful. We found some parks that were 10 out of 10. They were just like some of the best parks.
All right, which one's next?
So they won't even like show up all the time on your Google Maps. It'll be like a park that's just like attached to a school or something. Really thoughtful, really wonderful parks. Not easy to find. You do kind of have to hunt them down, even get on a train or a tram to get to one. But it could be a day. There's parks with free animals to see, themes, like they're worth going to, and it is one of the cooler parts of being in Sweden. The coffee culture in Sweden is strong, which I love. The weather's a lot like Seattle, right? It's really moody, really rainy. The food culture is kind of like Seattle too, in the sense that you drink coffee once to twice a day with a pastry though. In Sweden, they love their pastries. The big ones are cardamom buns, which honestly, some of them have the texture of like almost a Krispy Kreme donut, like melty. I really liked them. The other food to try is meatballs, obviously IKEA style. So we had lots of cardamom buns and meatballs. There's other flavors of buns and twists that you can have. They were nice. They're usually $4 to $5 each. The coffee is $4 to $5 each. So to go out with your family for coffee and a bun is not a cheap experience, but it's definitely something to do while you're in Sweden, and it's what they like to do. I'm guilty of going every single day at least once for coffee and pastries because that's kind of my favorite part of traveling. It was wonderful. They have a massive candy culture in Sweden as well. So when you go to Sweden, you have to go to a candy store and try to eat some of their local candies. Lots of black licorice, like an ungodly amount. Something I have to mention about the culture that honestly really threw me off. In some experiences, I almost left because I didn't know what to make of it. Swedes come off as extremely cold very often. I started calling it the Swedish scowl because they will make eye contact with you, but they do not smile. It's like that. And they will look at you and they will frown and they will give you an up and down and talk about you in Swedish directly in front of you. No matter how polite I was being, how quiet, how put together. I got that a lot, which really threw me off. But what I noticed is that when you start talking to them, for the most part, the more you talked, the more wonderful they were. I had people help me get off the train because it's hard to do with my kids, like just pick up my kids and set them out, and had my Airbnb host drive me to our house because the trains were so complicated the first day and she didn't want us to have to wait around. So kind. It's like cold exterior, warm interior. You kind of have to work to see it though. It's the coldest place I've ever been for how people treat you. It's a little weird. I made the least amount of friends. Usually when me and my husband travel, even for a couple of days, we'll end up like getting invited into someone's house or like having someone bring us over extra food at a restaurant and just sit with us. Like they see the foreigner and they're excited. That did not happen here. As friendly as we are, I don't feel like we made any friends in Sweden, which is really unusual for us. My favorite part of the whole trip, though, is our cruise ship across the Baltic Sea to get to Finland. It's a Swedish, Finnish, and Estonia thing where they have cruise ships that go to all three places. And it was one of the most fun experiences I've ever had with my kids. The cruise ships have playrooms of ball pits and hot tubs, but like kid hot tubs too, where they could like go down little warm slides. This was also the most affordable part of my Scandinavian trip so far. It was only $200 per night for all of us, including an all-you-can-eat buffet. The kids area was all free, our room and board for the night, and we had an upgraded room that had a little more space. All in all, I loved my trip to Stockholm. I'm so glad I've gone, but this is one of the places that I found to be a little harder and colder than anywhere else I've traveled with kids outside of the States. It felt like traveling to Seattle a little bit. So if you're looking for like this warm Europe vibe, I would not, this isn't the first place I would go, but it's definitely epic. The buildings are epic, the history is interesting, and it's worth checking out. It's definitely very different.